Hello and welcome back to another episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks, a technology podcast for the curious and creative in the AECO and beyond. As you've been following along, as I know you're all riveted to your seats waiting for this episode, here in Series 3, we're bypassing the theme and going with great guests. So, guest's choice, AECO Mavericks Unscripted. And here we are in our final Maverick of the series. And I can't think of a better Maverick who absolutely wears that moniker. Aaron Muller, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
And before we jump into our topic, which was actually no topic, so we're going to do an AMA with Aaron, which I think is a perfect way to end this episode. But before that, I'm going to give Aaron the opportunity to tell us all about himself, although I know we all know who Aaron is, but let's see what he has to say, how he's going to share his knowledge with us. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Yeah. My name's Aaron Maller. I've been working in architecture since 2005. Went to school at University of Buffalo. Accidentally got into BIM because the economy in upstate New York is awful. So firms are constantly shuffling people around. And there was a firm that was like, we need to use this new software called Digital Project. It's modeling in 3D. And I was like, hey, I need a job. Let's do it. And nobody was teaching it. They were just all trying to figure out how it worked. So I tried figuring it out as well. And when that job ended, then there was an ArchiCAD firm, then there was a Vectorworks firm. I got that order incorrect. It was Vectorworks first. Then there was an ADT firm. And then finally, trying to move back to Syracuse, I landed in a Revit firm. So it's been almost 20 years. I'm in Texas now, moved here to work at the Beck Group. I was there for 5 years running their BIM implementation before starting Parallax Team. And that was based on social media. There were just so many folks on social media being like, can you help us like what you're doing at Beck? And can you teach us how you're doing that? And can you help us with a template? So it was just time in 2015, started Parallax Team. We're coming up on 10 years. It'll be 10 years in July, which is freaky. John, that means it's been, I believe, almost 8 for you coming up
I
on
think
8.
so.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe so.
pretty cool.
So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Not really a nutshell. This is me in a nutshell. Sorry, been waiting to do that for like 5 years. Finally got to.
Nice.
There you go.
That there for you's the way I've got the accent today. For you listening and not watching, this is a great reason why you should go watch the YouTube feed because Aaron just showed us what he looks like in a nutshell. It's worth the price of admission.
It's really not, but that's okay.
So the idea here again, any topic, and I came of thought that an ask me anything would be great for you, Aaron. And the question that I have, I always see when you're traveling and going about across your different social media feeds, you always have this little koala that goes with you. And I know there's a story, and I may even know the story, but I don't remember it. So enlighten.
Yeah, for sure. And it's probably the same story that a lot of us have after having kids, right? So, me traveling a lot was actually an accident as well that happened in the BIM community. Jape Holding from SolidCAD up in Canada, actually back in 2010 or 2011, asked what I was working on a phone call that was just about troubleshooting some stuff. And then he's like, why don't you fly to Canada and talk about it? I never knew I wanted to travel before. Before Allie and I had the kiddos, we were traveling a lot just for the build events, for AU, whatever else. And after our first was born, she got a little stuffed koala bear, and all three of our girls now have their own same koala bear. And they were so sad when I would leave to go on a trip that what Allie and I decided is I would take a spare one with me. And see, we had bought spares because all three of them are so attached to their koala bears that I'm like, what the heck are we going to do if one of those things goes missing or gets lost? So we have a whole closet full of spares. And I took one with me one day. And our oldest is very inquisitive. So she needed a whole backstory when she saw the pictures because she looked at her koala bear and then looked at the picture and was like, I don't understand. So we said, this is cousin Koali, who meets me at the airport whenever I travel. And at first we said it as like a joke, but then Adeline said, I think she keeps daddy company so he's not sad. And since then, it's just kind of taken on a life of its own. It's got to go with me when I travel. I try to get pictures everywhere. The pilots on one of my flights at American Airlines were the coolest. They took it up into the cockpit, put it up near the altimeter, and took photos of it. I've never gotten to go to the cockpit before, but the freaking
Yeah.
koala bear has. I'm so mad about that because I love planes. But honestly, it's also good for me because I'm a giant baby and I don't know about you guys, but now that the girls are here, I find traveling to be a lot harder now. It's harder on me. Like I'm conflicted between I love the industry, I love talking to people, but every hour away is an hour gone. And I'm like, when the girls are sad and geez, I missed Halloween, like so quality is good for me and good for them.
Awesome. I always like seeing the pictures of it in random places. So
For
the
sure.
cockpit one was really cool.
That was really cool. The hardest part is they know when I pull in the driveway when I'm home, and I have to get it in the house without them seeing it because
Yeah.
it has to leave at the airport. So
Yeah.
I can't lock it in the trunk because her book bag goes there in the morning. It's a whole ordeal. We have it engineered pretty well.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken the bear on some training classes. I've taken it on some support calls as well. Kind of just really everywhere I go now, it goes with me.
Uh,
It's pretty fun.
So as we're talking about the idea of the koala, and we see that on social media, I guess the next question is, where did the handle come from?
The handle, oh goodness. Oh wow. Long ago, I had a reputation amongst my two best friends who may actually hear this, they may not. Brian and Mike, my two best friends up in New York still, now affectionately known as Uncle Brian and Uncle Mike. We had a joke between the three of us that every bad decision I made in my life, I had to make twice. It wasn't enough to make the mistake once. I didn't learn until I went back for seconds and experienced it again. So the joke was I was a fool that would go down any road twice. Nickname came out of there. A lot of people don't know that story. I don't actually know that I've ever actually explained that in the industry, which is kind of funny.
I
Um,
think you've always hinted towards like people ask you and you just kind of say like, "Wouldn't you like to know?" And then you leave it. So
and I guess that's it. So
you
yeah, I
heard it
mean,
here first.
That's right, exclusive.
there were some particularly bad decisions I made early in life that I insisted on doing twice just to make sure I
Get them done.
just to make sure I was, all set there. And
Yeah,
that's where it came from. And then it just kind of stuck.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all been there. I know I've made a few decisions that I wanted to double check just to make sure that they were the wrong decision. And yep, that was absolutely correct.
Absolutely. By the way, I don't condone this. You should be able to learn from a bad decision once. You should not have to make the
Or
decision
listen to others
twice.
who've like made
Or
the
yeah,
terrible
you
decisions,
know,
please.
that's actually a really big part of it. And just talking about Carl, we were talking about support prior to the actual recording starting, and this is kind of a funny thing because I actually have a reputation. I'm sure you guys know this, but I have a reputation of being A, fairly opinionated, B, sometimes been called fairly arrogant, and C, within some organizations, it's been said many times that people get upset because I shoot down their ideas or I answer a question too quickly. And the funny thing that I like to point out to all of those people in the organizations or the people that we're supporting is it's absolutely not because I think I know any more or am any smarter than everybody else. I've already jacked up the thing you're asking about. I've already made every
Yeah,
bad decision out there. So a lot of the time somebody's like, what if we try this? And I'm immediately like, we're not doing that. It's not because I want to shoot down their idea. It's because I thought what they were thinking was a great idea. And I was like, heck yeah, let's do that. And then I was like, oh, and
yeah,
I joked with one manager. They're like, you should take a lap around the office before you shoot down the idea. And I'm like, definitely get where your head's at. Sometimes you have to like throw the extra. And sometimes it really helps to explain it to users, right? Like to
yeah,
say, hey, like I want to be super clear. I love where your head's at. And I too thought this would be an awesome idea. I'm not shooting it down because it's your idea. Like I want us to get to a solution together, but I tried this back in 2012 and like here's what's going to happen and blah blah blah.
yeah.
Thankfully, I've got a really good memory for when I've made bad decisions. So I could
Well,
tell
then it's
somebody
like it's funny because a lot of people are pretty sensitive to it, where
they are.
like it's good feedback to hear that
Mhm.
quickly, like fail fast, I guess. Like you kind of get told right away. It's funny because like one of my stories is like back on Revit forum back in like
Oh
2014,
no, here it
2015.
comes. I'm going back into my nutshell.
Yeah, I showed like there was like some janky thing to update a parameter on a level or something. And I was like, oh, you can update it with Dynamo. And you replied, and you're like, yeah, but you have to run that freaking Dynamo graph every single time you want to update it. And it's true, though. I mean, it's completely valid.
So
Um,
let's be willing to put two asterisks on this one. I may have been correct. I was a huge jerk when I typed that response, and I remember
you're
because
fine.
I was stressed out, and I remember because I actually said something like, "Yeah, you can do that, and then you have to manage Dynamo, and you have to deploy all the packages and make sure the
Yeah,
users know how to open it and use it."
for
And it
sure.
it was a snotty way to answer though, and that's part of the. So I think a lot of the
That
time.
was a long time ago before Dynamo even reached the adoption it has now. So it was definitely like a niche to where it's like, sure, you can make that parameter update once, but now making that something you can use consistently back in, gosh, 20, 2014, 2015. Like very hard to do. I mean, it's hard to get people to run dynamo graphs correctly today, and it's included in Revit. So it was an interesting interaction for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun for me to think back on that interaction too, because I always forget about it. But it's funny
I
because
think it's
now
funny.
it's great. But now, like between us, like we've got, so many graphs that do so many great things, and constantly clients are asking us, like Anthea, who's a former client that we love working with. She's in a new firm now, and our new firm is not a client, but she was emailing Melissa and I just this week, like, I could really use these dynamo graphs that do this cool thing. And of course, we want to help her because we want to help everybody we can. But it's like it goes back to that, like, oh, geez, at your new organization, I don't know how your
The
packages are
setup.
managed, and I don't know how it's set up, and I can send you these graphs, but are they going to break? And how's that going to work? And but it's interesting because yeah, we want to be able to do it for everybody, right? Like we want to be able to make it easy. And so, John, your other comment about like, failing fast and is it good advice? I've disagreed with a lot of, let's call them managerial or principals or C-suites, whatever you want to call it. And I'll continue to buck this trend because they've constantly given me the advice. Like I mentioned before, one principal told me, if somebody asks you a question and you already know the answer, lie to them. Tell them you're going to go think about it and then come back in 10 minutes and tell them you know the answer. I actually think that's a disservice to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the same way, John. Like if I'm asking you a question, and God knows, like I've tried to pull off some ridiculously awful stuff the other day. You were fixing a Python node I pulled off of Chat GPT. And if you look at it in 5 seconds in, you're like, that's the worst thing ever. I want someone to just tell me it's the worst thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest thing about doing support is you're supporting a problem, but you're also trying to mitigate emotional response, which I find obviously that's where I've not done the best in my career, of course. That
It's an
part's
interesting one to dance around, this
it's
emotional response. And there's a lot of
absolutely
ego. I think we mentioned this on the last one or the one before, Carl. It might have been with Jeff, but interesting thing with Revit users or BIM users, there's a lot of egos at play. Like people are like, I did the coolest thing in Revit ever.
absolutely.
Someone else might have done it, and like there's a lot of that at play and giving feedback. It's crazy to me that architects do critiques and they have designs ripped apart by instructors, but then you go work at a firm and someone tells you you're doing Revit wrong and now you're really ticked off. So
I,
it's like the weirdest thing to me.
John, I'll tell
Uh
you something interesting about that. It's a very being sensitive to that is one of the reasons it's super important to me that every time somebody gives us a great suggestion or a great idea and we decide like, wow, that's great, we should implement that. I know it started out as a joke, but that's why like when a content library gets a new feature that was recommended by a client, we throw their name in it. And like the
mhm.
template change log we have for the Parallax template, Laura, who's one of our clients at Niles Bolton, just caught a typo that has been in the Parallax template since 2015. Let's forget about the fact that I didn't see it, Melissa didn't see it, John Marlowe didn't see it, none of our other customers have seen it. Laura caught it. We just updated it in the template and we threw a thanks Laura in the changelog. And it's not, you know, I don't want to say that's about ego, but because I'm sensitive to the ego issue, I don't ever want somebody to come to me and be like, you're taking our idea, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, Tom Whitehead suggested something about the door library, and it was a great idea, so we implemented it. And Beth at HCM has suggested things for the template, and we've implemented it. So I try to always give credit because I'm afraid of that.
Yeah.
I don't want to step on anyone's ego. Contrary to popular misconception, I am almost petrified of conflict. I do not like arguing with people. My online persona would have you believe otherwise, but I think that's just the way I type because I'm from New
This
York.
podcast's gonna undo all of it for you then.
I just want to be friends.
He's actually a really nice guy, everyone.
I try to be nice. I find when you're doing support and doing damage control, it becomes harder to it becomes harder because obviously, so one of the things I do with a lot of my friends is, again, I grew up in New York, so there's certain things that I was raised you just don't talk about outside your home, and those things are like politics and religion. Those are your own business. So I get along with a lot of friends because we don't have to discuss those things. I don't want to discuss those things, right? Now it's interesting when you're doing support and people look to you to do the process of elimination and get down to what is the cause of something, because when you're doing the process of elimination to find a cause, it doesn't generally care about my feelings or your feelings. It just cares about what is the cause. And so, as recently as this morning, I was doing a support ticket and it was like, hey, these sheets are missing from my model. And it's like, oh, geez, well, hold on, let me open the model and see if something went wrong. Now I open the model on my end and the sheets are all there. So you can imagine now we're in this weird situation where it's like, hey, we do need to find out why they appear to be missing on your screen, but they are in the model at least. So I feel like we're at least safe. We didn't lose 100 sheets, right? Like that's an okay situation, but there's still room for like some temperament discussion and well, they're not there on my screen, so this is a problem. And I'm like,
Yeah.
agreed. And I mean, it came up on another ticket as well, where some computers or a server at a client's office are doing weird things. And the first step in support is to try to reproduce. And so if we pull the file to our server and open it, everything behaves fine. So now it's that dicey conversation of, they think it's caused because they installed a point release of Revit. And I'm like, well, we're in that same point release and it's not behaving that way here. So I don't know the cause. I totally agree there's a problem, but I don't think the point release is it, and now it becomes like, hopefully feelings don't get hurt, right? And that's where I am a little bad because I'm just like, hey, facts, here they are. And wah wah.
Well, I think one of the things that's a little bit different on your side is that in your scenario, you're usually brought in as support as the person that's been hired to do that. So you're seen as an expert in that realm. So they go to get support. Whereas sometimes when you're getting support because your cable's not working and you call up and you get support, you're like, in your mind, it's the lowest common denominator on the other side of that phone or that message or that chat. So it's easy to get a little emotional when it comes in. And
Absolutely.
so I think sometimes you get that that's a double-edged sword for you because you get a little bit more. I know that I'm talking to someone that's really good at this, so I've already tailored my emotions. But on the flip side, they also know that I'm really good at this, so this isn't the answer I was expecting. Now I'm getting the attitude, now I'm getting the arrogance, then they get a little bit
Yeah,
hot under the collar.
and I think it actually works both as an advantage and a disadvantage. I think it works as an advantage. And what we encourage a lot of our customers to do, a lot of our customers have BIM staff and we coordinate with their BIM staff, right? And so they will get pushback internally. And that's where we'll say, hey, you can have your staff ask us directly. And they'll get basically the same answer from us. And in those cases, we don't have any problem being like super pleasant and all smiles, thank you, when we're giving them the answer because, again, it's not personal, it's all facts. So on one hand, it's easier for us to be emotionless and just be all pleasant because we're not invested internally. The flip side is, you know, because there's not office politics for us when we're inside or interacting with our clients, sometimes by the time the problems reach us, everybody's already ready to lash out. So I mean, I think this is true if you work in any kind of support role, I think. And I joke around with some of the folks at Autodesk who actually get the text results of the CER reports when Revit crashes. But I'm amazed at some of the things people will say to folks in support when they don't know who the person is. I mean, doing support in general, not just at Parallax, but my time at Beck, my time at QPK, my time in the whole industry has absolutely changed the way, you know, I am with other support people. Like one of our cars went into the dealership and we were supposed to get it back the next day, and we didn't get it back for a week. And
Yeah.
I can be upset that we didn't get the car back, and I can be upset that they didn't keep their word. But chances are the person I talk to when I go to the dealership is not the person that caused the week delay. And
Yeah.
there's this tendency to just take it out on whoever you're meeting. And I definitely feel that in our current role. So
It
it's
definitely makes
definitely
you a little more aware of how people, how you might treat people when you're dealing with something like
absolutely,
frustrating,
absolutely, yeah,
and like
yeah.
I tend to not get like really mad and like scream at someone or something, but like years ago we had a rental car situation where they gave it to someone else, and we're like, I paid for it already and everything. And the lady on the phone was just like telling me something, and I told her she's the least helpful person I've ever talked to. She
Oh,
was like, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I'm like, yeah. So it's just like, I didn't scream at her, but I'm like, you're not helpful. You just told me tough luck, the
yeah.
car's gone, and it's just like, it definitely makes you think. And
I've 100% done that in that same situation too. And none of us are perfect, right?
Yeah.
I did lash out at a support person when my car was at the dealership once, and I thought they broke something on the car. And when I realized I was wrong, I did make a point to go all the way back and apologize to the gentleman, even though he was already like taking steps to try to fix it. He was going to fix it anyway, even though it wasn't their fault. And I was like, no, 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 like because I realized I had just completely overstepped.
Mm.
But I have done that. So that's the Seinfeld rental car problem, right? I didn't reserve a reservation. I reserved a car.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's always interesting. And like, I mean, we've probably all worked customer service previously. Like years ago, I worked at a call center and get screamed at and called names that are awful, and like that's one thing I think generally being in customer service and then working like support, it teaches you to not be that way, which is a good thing. And
It does.
thankfully,
It
we don't get
does.
people screaming at us and calling us cuss words. So that's nice.
Not since some of our reconciliation projects out in Fort Worth. I haven't been called a name in a few years. I did have a roll of drawings thrown at me once, but that was a much different situation.
Oh man.
Revit is dangerous stuff.
When it comes to that, it's funny that you bring that up. I was on a call. I don't do support work, but sometimes I'm brought in as a technical asset to help with the support side. And a gentleman was very loud, very boisterous, from Long Island. So he used a lot of very colorful words to describe his process. And we walked through it. There was a problem. We ended up fixing it. But after that, just as pleasant as punch, because it's just his general demeanor. And some people say, well, the general contractor, but sometimes it's a personality, and the words that come out of the mouth would come out of their mouths whether they're happy or not happy. And that was a lesson that always learned to me, is that sometimes what they're saying isn't A, it's not personal, but B,
Sure.
maybe if they were congratulating you, the same words would be coming out of the mouth. So you have to
Yeah.
sort of listen to the meaning aside being ascended because they said A or B.
Yeah, and one of the things I try to encourage other BIM support staff or any support staff to do, and I don't know if this works or not, but one of the things that I do with clients now is, we're not responsible for the software, or for, I mean, not in our case anyway, or for the state of the industry on the whole. And I think support people, sometimes we have a tendency of, if a user is complaining or getting kind of loud or vocal, like it has to be us versus them. Like we have to respond in kind because they're attacking and we have to attack too. So, when I have customers who start getting, amped up or something, and they say, well, I can't believe this is how it is, and I shouldn't have to do this, and I shouldn't have to do that. Like one of the first things I like to say is like, hey, I'm with you. Like, absolutely, you shouldn't have to, but here's where we are.
Yeah.
So now, like, what do you want to do now? I'm like,
move forward.
yeah, and when we were working on Dickie's Arena, and we were modeling all that stuff and finding all those issues, and we were trying to just help the construction team get done. It's like if you act as an empath and you put yourself in anybody's shoes in that trailer, you can resonate with everybody. You've got an owner who's mad that they don't want to pay. I get that. I'm with you. You've got a builder who just wants to build stuff and they can. I get that. And I'm with you. And you've got engineers and architects who are mad because they felt like they were done drawing it and now they're learning that they're not. And hey, like I've been there. I feel that. And my whole thing in the room is when everybody was yelling at each other, I'm like, hey, look, what do you guys want to do? Like that's it for me. I'm like, I get that we're all upset, but we're here now. All we can do is work together and get to the other side. Like, you don't feel like you should have to model this stuff? I'm with you. I might agree with you, I might not, but it's not me versus you. Like, this is where we are. Now what do you want to do? Yep. Deploying Dynamo, like, sending a graph to somebody. I shouldn't have to manage these packages. I'm an architect. I don't know what this means. Hey, I'm with you. Now, this thing can help you with your job, but you have to do the packages, or what do you want to do? It's just go do it manually. Like,
should just do this.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I totally agree. I think Revit should just, and there's a building, it doesn't do it though.
All the time. I should just do this.
Yeah.
Agreed. Cool, man.
Now what? Cool story, bro. It's like one of my, I love to give that response to people, not in a snarky way, but because it is so over the top snarky, they instantly know that it means, oh, that doesn't actually help at all. Right. Yeah. I had somebody in a meeting recently. We were explaining that, we have our Parallax template and we have a change log that's live on Notion. You can see updates that we make every day. And they were like, well, why doesn't our template get every template that you make every day? And it's like, well, because there's a day and time that we send it to you. And once you have it, it's now a whole different file. They're just off doing their own thing. And he actually said to me in a meeting, he's like, well, I don't understand why you don't just set it up so that every change that you make to yours automatically happens to ours. And I'm like, yeah, cool story, bro. That's just not a thing.
Yeah.
Like you said it, but it's not real.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of interesting.
So with that and coming with the support side of things, do you find that when you get into, because it's not just support that you do, you have a whole gamut of things you do, content, and by content I mean making Revit content, not the
Sure.
content we were talking about last week with the Revit kid. But do you find some of that bleeds over into the training? When you're training somebody on Revit or new software, that you sort of answer a question that is likely going to come anyways, because I've been here, I've taught this 100 times. This is your question. This is why that doesn't work. I'm going to nip this in the bud and sort of just carry on.
Here's what I think it all boils down to. And what I tell clients is it all boils down to predictability. And that's what we're always aiming for. Whether it's the project template, whether it's the content libraries, whether it's the training, whether it's the workflows and how they do something, whether it's Dynamo, what we are always hoping for is predictability in their support questions. If a user comes to me with a problem, I want to know how to fix it reasonably fast so I can get them back on their way. There was a problem a specific interior designer had that will stick with me forever, and it was back in 2010. And I had just started at Beck, and this user had already been told, like in-place families, we try not to do them, yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. So they're modeling a big church, huge reception desk, got modeled as an in-place family. It was beautiful. It was all dimensioned. Everything was done. It was great. And in the 11th hour of the construction documents, they realized they had to move it like 24 inches to the right or something. I was in a conference that day. She tried to move it 24 inches to the right. The whole thing blew apart. You know how in-place families are. It just shattered. Dimensions blew apart. The thing came apart into separate pieces and so on. So get a support ticket that says, how do I fix this? This is when, right, as a support person, you don't have a good path forward. The support answer is it shouldn't have been an in-place family. It should have been modeled in the real family editor. Then you'd be able to move it. Your dimensions wouldn't blow apart. This answer sucks. She's about to find out she's not making her deadline with the thing she wants. And that's not an answer anybody in support wants to give. We want to be predictable and successful. So as you can imagine, that answer didn't go over super well. And I said, hey, I can't do it because I'm in a conference right now. But here's how we should have fixed it. Here's what you can do damage control for today. It's not going to be great. Your dimensions are going to go away. Sorry. Obviously, that answer wasn't good enough. It got flown up. You know how it goes to leadership and all that stuff. So the goal for me is always predictability. When we're building content libraries, we don't cover 100% of the possibilities, but we want to cover enough that we have a predictable answer. This is also why I decline training engagements where people ask us to train them in Revit, but they don't have a template that we built. Because in my head, I go back to, okay, do they have view templates in their project template already? If they don't, does that mean that when we get to view templates, I got to go through like the whole 4 hours of like, hey, you can put VG RVT links in here. You can set them to custom. You can do this. You can do that. I can skip all of that if I'm just saying, here are the view templates that we have in your template. I'll show you how they work, but we're not going to go into every setting, right? So if you have to teach them how to make the Swiss watch instead of just giving them the Swiss watch to wear, it's very different. And it makes it an unpredictable environment. So for me, training and support all comes down to like, if we can all work in a predictable method, then we can help solve each other's problems and hopefully alleviate the ego/emotional battlefield, for lack of a better term.
And it's funny, your answer to my question about teaching in a way that you answer a question before it comes answered my next question.
Oh, nice. What was the next
There you
question?
go.
Just out of curiosity.
So the next question was kind of about when you're dealing with support, which is why I don't do it. But you'll see people that are really good at it. They can be engaged with the client. They can be looking up an answer. They can find a solution, and all in like what seems like milliseconds. But it seems to me now I understand why, is because they have predictability. Now, that's not always going to be the case,
Sure.
but they understand generally what the question is. They understand some of the answers. They have some stuff together, and they have a kit of parts to be able to put together to give you that response. And it's not about giving a canned response, but it's about solving the majority of your problem as quickly as they can to get you productive and back on your way.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's literally a process of elimination, right? And so, John, you'll appreciate this, but I'm still working on a support ticket with Jacob Small right now, and it's actually our support
Mhm.
ticket for something that's broken. And we keep trying to eliminate things that are the cause or could be the cause. And, it's a genuine head scratcher because every firm is different organization, which means machines are set up differently, which means software is installed differently. And then you've got, again, if it's Dynamo, you've got your packages, you've got your files, you've got your ACC. So we've got an issue that does only seem to happen at all of Parallax, but it's consistent on all of our machines in this one file on ACC doing this one thing in Dynamo. So it's always interesting. But yeah, there's you hopefully are trying to whittle things down to what the answer could be. And one of my favorite experiences, honestly, is when somebody brings us a support question and we have no freaking idea. And it happened last week. Somebody's machine flat out wouldn't even launch Revit. You just got a whole bunch of DLL errors right when you clicked the icon. So we looked it up and we're like, oh, interesting. I had never known this. You guys may have experienced it. Your SQLite database that's part of Windows can get corrupted. And if you're using a version of Revit that has the Steel Connections Autodesk add-in built in, it will just fail to open. And never had experienced it in however many years of Revit. But now, because I experienced it last week, it's in that bucket, right, Carl? So now it's in that bucket. So the next time I see crazy DLLs, I'm going to be like, you have to go to the command line and do this whole weird ninja thing that like tells you if the SQL database is ruined. But I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So every time you don't know something, you learn it from somebody else, and your bag of tools gets bigger. That's what I'm
Mhm.
excited about.
Those ones are always interesting because I always remember years ago Revit would freeze and then you'd go to about and it unfreeze. It was like the weirdest thing.
Right. Yeah.
And part of that was because like when I worked at the firm I worked at, we were responsible for checking people's licenses all the time. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, go to about manage license. And then the Revit unlocked. So from then on, anytime someone's stuff locked, I'd walk up and say, click about and manage license. And they're like, how the heck do you know that? It's like, yeah, because
Because
person
I
A, B,
messed this up
C.
already.
Yeah. And it's like the weird, like those solutions, people are like, how do you know that? And like people look at it like you just like have like this like sense of how the tool works. And it's like, no, I've went down that road before, so to speak, right? Like
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not
it's
the only
always
one that happens to.
it's always interesting. And then like recalling that stuff's the part that becomes more difficult, I'm finding as you get older too, but like recalling all of that stuff's always like, I swear I saw this before. And at Parallax, we joke around about it being classic
Classic
Aaron or
John.
classic
Yeah.
John from the forums like years ago. It's like, oh, classic Aaron answered my question. And you might not even remember you answered that, but that's what's great too about stuff like the forums, as now it's there.
What does scare me about classic Aaron and classic John is when somebody brings me a question and I answer it, and then they find a post from classic me that disagrees with new me. And I'm like, all right, like,
You used to say
listen.
this. Why'd you change your mind in 10 years?
So there was one year from 2010 to 2011 when 2010 was, well, 2009 was one of the first years I worked on a multifamily job. And then 2010, we had to do a multifamily job when I was at Beck. And a whole bunch of logistics and reasons led us to all of the units were links instead of groups.
The right way. No, I'm just joking.
And I mean, like, you should know the whole project was awful. The staff was ready to mutiny. Nobody was happy. But it was still interesting from a Revit point of view because there were these funky things with the design options and the links and everything. So I submitted a class and taught at AU about it that year. Now, the moment that project was done, then I did another project with groups and I'm like, this is so much better. So I've spent the last 14 years talking about how links is not the way to do it. But I still get people who email because they find that handout and they're like, you said right here to do it with links. And I'm like, I totally did, man. And that was
Like a purple
14
Revit
years ago.
icon.
It's like before the origami, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm sure at some point, I don't think I ever said to explode CAD, but I'm sure I've given lots of bad advice out there, over the years. We all have. So
I think that's a great workaround, John. The purple icon is okay. This advice you said, okay, look at the
That was
icon.
purple icon era.
How many icon errors ago is it?
Yeah.
If it's more than one, it doesn't count
If
anymore.
you don't see origami, We probably changed our mind on how we're doing it.
When 26 comes out, I think this year's icons are going to have to all go back to like the 2010 icons, like with the cool letters, just to do it.
Yeah,
To start it all
there
over
you go.
again.
Yeah,
Nice.
that'll be awesome.
All right. As happens, we've blown past our half hour, so we're getting near the end. Those that listen know there's always that one last question I ask, but as I seem to have become akin to lately, I have one question before the last question.
Sure.
And again, for those of you listening, you have to check out the YouTube. But if you look directly behind Aaron in his video, you see one of his prides and joys, his drafting table and his arms, which are
Oh,
all not his arms, sorry, his mechanical drafting arms, just to be clear, that are also left-handed, correctly?
they are. They are
Which makes them
left-handed.
super
Yes.
hard to find,
Extremely. Yes.
but you still have them. And
Yes.
why?
Okay. So the one that's up on the shelf is actually the one I bought secondhand on eBay during college in 2003. I had a Mayliner, Paraliner on my drafting board, did first semester of studio, and then at the end of the semester, you pack it all up, you put it in storage, and you come back the next semester. And the cables were all bent from being in storage, and everybody's like, you got to go get a new cabling kit. I'm like, I'm not recabling this thing every semester. And I had seen one of these in an office and loved it. But yeah, so ironically, then getting them in lefty was actually really affordable because nobody's left-handed really. So the one that's up on the shelf I've had since college. That's the one I used in college. I still love hand drafting. It looks like the table hasn't been used, and that's because I'm busy with kids and everything. But I mean, people talk about like what's the most efficient workflow, and when you're working for a living and you want to make money and be successful and do a good job, you use the most efficient tool. When you want to have fun, it's a different story. I like to drive manual transmission cars, right? If somebody told me to go become a full-time delivery person and deliver packages, I would not go out there in like a six-speed Subaru or something and start delivering packages and burn up clutches in traffic, whatnot. But I like it for fun. If I want to relax on a Friday night, like drawing is, I think, much more fun. But I've always had the swing arm. I've always wanted the tabletop roller. I had never come across one. So Allison would tell you that like late at night when we're just sitting on the couch, one of my hobbies was just checking out eBay and scrolling a few saved searches, constantly looking for lefty tabletops and looking for the Alvin Elite table. That whole table has a pedal lever and you can just rotate it. Had never seen either for sale. And then about a couple years ago, twice in the same month, left-handed tabletop rollers showed up on eBay, and I bought both of them. There's a whole second one in a closet because they just don't pop up that often. And the table was brand new in the box, never even put together. And the owner was in LA, and they were like, man, it's going to cost more to ship this to you than it is for you to buy it. And I'm like, I don't care. I've been looking for that table for a decade and I want it. We did not realize it was as big as it is. So we had to rearrange the room for it. But yeah, I can't wait. Like I'm always designing this fictitious house that's never getting built because it's gigantic. And after I get it all designed the way I like in Revit, my plan is to take it over there and redraw it just for fun.
That's awesome.
I
It's a good
love it.
time. It's a good time. The pencil collection and everything is on this shelf right there. Spare blades, triangles, pencil leads, all that kind of good stuff.
There is definitely something therapeutic about doing the old school drafting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To be able to do that, there are parts that you don't miss. You can't just copy and repeat. My horrible habit is the swiping. Getting my old dirty hand across the
Yep.
lines and
Yep.
have to do that. And you have the
I have the beanbag eraser over there.
yeah,
Yep.
there you go.
Yeah.
The bag and
brush.
the eraser template. Yeah, all of that
Yep.
stuff.
Ink on Mylar, good times, right? Rapidographs from college. I'm not
Yes.
that old, even though Vanessa did one time okay boomer me at AU, but I'm not that old. But yeah, no, all those things, having to put the paper down so that you don't drag your arm across it, and I just love it. I've got a bunch of hand drawings in the closet still.
Yep. It's a whole different skill set. And with that, the final question of all of our episodes is to ask the guest du jour, that's you, Aaron, for your hack that's relevant to what we've been talking about here today. So, what's your hack?
What is my hack? Oof. Well, since we're on the topic, at least we were on the topic, we took it in the direction of support and trying to help folks in the industry, right? Like I think for me, and it has been hard for me over the years, but over the years, the older I get, the quicker I try to be to announce the moment I realize I'm wrong about something. I think it's a huge, it's sometimes hard, but I think it's always a growth exercise, but it's also a learning. Like I said, every time you learn something new, your bag gets a little bigger, your bag of tools. And part of that is also acknowledging, because sometimes like I am confident about what I think I know. And there are so many times when I realize I'm wrong. And the moment I realize it in a meeting or in a discussion with other people, I like to point out, A, hold on a second. I want to make sure everyone knows I'm wrong about this. And I also like to point out who the person is that made me realize that I'm wrong about something to make sure that they're getting credit for their right idea. And, not to go on because I know we're over time, but just so everybody knows, you may have seen on social media, like my appendix had to come out in July. Like I had to go have emergency surgery. And I had had some interesting stomach aches, throughout the year, whatever. And Allison was like, I think you need to go to the doctor. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay. It's a stomach ache. It'll be fine tomorrow. And this is one of those times. Allison called and got me a doctor's appointment on her own because I was not going to go. And she's like, you're getting your butt in that car and you're going to the doctor. And I was like, okay, you know what? If you think it's that important, I'll go. And I went to the doctor and they're like, you're going straight to the hospital. And I was like, wait, what? And, 12 hours later, and they were doing all that stuff. It's important to point out when you're wrong about something just because it's a learning exercise. And especially in support, there are times when someone brings me a question and I think I know what's going on and it turns out I'm totally wrong. And I like to just be like, hey, I'd like to point out that I was wrong because I thought it was going to be this and it's going to be this other thing instead. So let's try this. And that also helps your audience understand that you're not trying to be like an arrogant prick that just thinks you're right all the time. You came from a place of confidence because you genuinely did think you were correct, and the moment you realized you weren't, boop, we're wrong. And that's my hack.
I think that's a good hack. I think
Like
the idea and of that of saying this is what we thought, this is what it is. My bad, that wasn't my thing. Is great. I think it comes to what we were saying before. The growth as you go through it, and maybe now not doing everything twice, we have the ability to move on.
I now try not to make the mistakes twice after somebody points out that I'm wrong about something. That's true.
Well, and with that, I would like to thank you, Aaron, John, and everyone for joining us for another
Thanks for
episode
having
of
me.
Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks. It was great having you. This is the podcast where we explore tools, technologies, time-saving hacks, and how to not do things twice that are shaping the future. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe again, somewhere down here. Stay tuned for more insight into the exciting world of AECO and technology. And until next time, keep building, innovating, and exploring the possibilities.